لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم.
We have indeed created man in the best shape.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah, wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah, wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, there are countless benefits of reciting Durood and Salam on the best of creation, the seal of prophethood, peace of our heart and mind, the most generous and kind, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is reported to have said, angels keep sending mercies upon a Muslim until he continues to recite salat upon me. Now it is the person's choice whether he recites less or more. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Intentions play an absolutely crucial role in our life. Their importance can be realized from this saying of our beloved Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, innamal a'malu bin niyyat. The actions are dependent upon intentions. Therefore, I make the intention that I record this silsila to gain the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal and for the benefit of the people. You can also make some good intentions to gain some reward. That I will try to watch this silsila with full concentration and remove any obstacles that will come in the way. Whatever I will learn, I will try to remember by making notes if possible, and I will try to act upon this information and also convey it to others. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, welcome to our silsila Wonderful Creation. In this silsila, we'll try to learn about the wonders of human body and try to understand all those intricate processes that are taking place within our body that we are not even aware of. The aim of this silsila is to help us be grateful for this amazing bounty in the form of a human body, and also to strengthen our belief in the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal. In the first episode of this silsila, we learnt about the cell membrane, the cytoskeleton and endoplasmic reticulum. In this episode, we shall learn about other structures that are present within a cell. These include the nucleus, ribosomes, the mitochondria, Golgi body and lysosomes. We shall try to understand their structure, what functions each of these organelles perform, and what happens when things go wrong with these organelles. My dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, in learning about the organelle structure and function, please remain focused on this fact, that these organelles are present in a cell that is only the size of a millionth of a meter and cannot be seen without the help of a microscope. How small the structure of these organelles will be inside a cell that is millionth of a meter, and how miraculous it is that complex and intricate functions take place at such a microscopic level. Let us first try to understand the nucleus. When we look at the cell under the microscope, the most prominent organelle is the nucleus. The nucleus is the operational center for the entire cell. As we learned in the previous episode that all of our cells have an outer layer called the cell membrane, the nucleus has its own membrane, which is also a double layer called nuclear envelope. So inside the nucleus there are two copies of the genomic DNA, which is packaged into little chromosomes. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, genomic DNA, or in other terms referred to as DNA, is our code of life. Our DNA holds all of the genetic material that determines our traits, ranging from our hair color to our propensity to develop different diseases. All of that DNA is packaged into chromosomes in our cells. This is like the manual of a machine. However, This manual is so small that you cannot see it with a simple microscope. You in fact need an even stronger microscope called electron microscope to look at the strands of DNA. Let us try to understand the structure and the packaging of the genomic DNA. Chromosomes, they are made up of long pieces of double-stranded DNA, twisted and condensed into a compact packaging. If left uncondensed, the strands of DNA would be about 2 meters each, far too long to fit inside our cells, which are millionth of a meter. Specialized proteins, they bind to the DNA and help fold it properly so that it condenses into the tight configuration required to make chromosomes without getting tangled. The condensed DNA must also be configured so that enzymes can reach each part of it for repair, transcription, and translation. The basic DNA double helix is wound around histone proteins, and these DNA protein complexes, they then fold into structures called nucleosomes. A strand of nucleosome winds into a fiber called chromatin, which is about 30 nanometers in diameter and visible in an electron microscope. A chromosome is made up of tightly packaged chromatin strands. My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, this packaging at such a microscopic level is simply mind-blowing. There are repeated cycles of packaging and unfolding of the genomic DNA because in many cells of our body, our whole DNA is copied and replicated to form new cells. If it was not for these new cells, our body will age so fast that we may become old and unable to function within months of our birth. Also, this unfolding, copying, and replication of the genomic DNA has to be precise to produce an exact replica of our code of life. For this to happen, there are very intricate mechanisms in place. That if a mistake were to happen, it is corrected by a number of different mechanisms. When these correction mechanisms fail due to harmful chemical reactions secondary to our carelessness and bad habits of smoking, chewing tobacco, consuming artificially synthesized food products, then this can lead to what we call as cancer. Within the nucleus, different parts of the DNA are translated into proteins. These proteins are required to perform all those necessary chemical reactions in our body. For every function in our body, there is a protein that makes it happen in one form or another. These proteins then travel out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm through the little holes in the nuclear envelope called nuclear pores. And in a single nucleus, there are hundreds of these pores. My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, nucleus performs many different functions, including packaging of DNA into chromatin, copying of this DNA for new cell formation, and most importantly, DNA is used to produce all those proteins which control all of our bodily functions. So when any of these mechanisms fail, we develop all sorts of diseases. Ultimately, every disease in our body has its origin in the problem with DNA. It is beyond the scope of this silsila that I go into the details of these processes behind this. However, all I can say is that when DNA material is packaged into chromatin, every gene has its own precise location on these strands. When this precise location of genes is disturbed, then this leads to different diseases. Not just genes, but every single base within our DNA has a specific location. Those of us who will understand the difference between a gene and a base will be able to truly appreciate this precise nature of packaging. And do you know what level all of this is happening at? Within a single nucleus. How large is a nucleus? About 6 micrometers. Divide a meter into 1 million equal parts. Each single division will be 1 micrometer. Human intellect fails to comprehend how such complex and intricate processes are taking place at such a microscopic level with such precision. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So, O men and jinns, which favor of your lords will you deny? My dearest brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, this was indeed a very brief glimpse into the nucleus. Despite advances in the field of medicine, scientists they still lack complete understanding of the genomic DNA. Let us now look at the next organelle within the cell, and that is of ribosomes. The information for every type of organism is contained within its genome, which consists of the double-stranded DNA. We heard the word genes when we were learning about the nucleus. Genes are the fundamental units of genomic DNA, and each gene consists of a unique sequence of DNA bases which codes for a single protein. These proteins they control different chemical reactions that are taking place within our body. For a gene to be expressed in the form of a protein, it must be first transcribed into an RNA molecule. Transcription, this is a special process which produces what scientists call a messenger RNA, which is then translated to produce a protein. In simple terms, information flows in gene expression from DNA to RNA to proteins. This is the central dogma of molecular biology. Ribosomes, they are the aggregates of ribonucleic acid known as RNA and also proteins. They are the sites of protein synthesis in the cell. In other words, ribosomes provide the machinery for the synthesis of proteins. First of all, the code from the DNA is copied in the form of a messenger RNA. In molecular biology language, this process is called transcription. Transcription must occur from specific regions of the genome at the proper time and in appropriate amounts. Within the genes, there are single sequences which tell ribosomes to start producing the code in the form of messenger RNA. Similarly, there are end sequences within the genome which signal to ribosomes that transcription must stop now. There is a very detailed and complex process of transcription, which once again is not the scope of the silsila. Those viewers of Madani Channel who have studied biology at degree level will understand the true extent and intricacies of this process. Problems can happen with this transcription process, which leads to what scientists call as mutations. A mutation is a change that occurs in our DNA sequence, either due to mistakes when the DNA is copied during transcription or as the result of environmental factors such as smoking, ultraviolet light, and other chemicals that we consume in our food. One form of mutation is called a point mutation, in which a single base is changed. This will therefore change one base in the resulting mRNA strand. Depending on what the change is, it could have different effects on resulting amino acids. And raised cholesterol levels can also be the result of mutation in the protein, which codes for the LDL receptor. These people will have high levels of LDL cholesterol, in other terms bad cholesterol, and this bad cholesterol then accumulates in blood vessels, causing stroke and heart attack. Some other well-known inherited genetic disorders, they include cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, phenylketonuria, and color blindness. We really need to be grateful to Allah Azza wa Jal that for a majority of us, the process of transcription does not yield any mutations. If we were to understand this blessing, we will probably stop complaining about all of our problems. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So, O men and jinns, which favor of your Lord will you deny? Let us now move to the next structure that is present inside the cell, and that is the mitochondria. Before I begin discussing this structure, I would like you to imagine a scenario that all the powerhouses in the country that produce electricity, they fail, and you have no electricity in your house at all. The bulbs are not lighting, the heater is not working, fridge cannot perform its function, and most importantly, you cannot recharge your mobile phone and its battery goes dead. Think of all the problems that will come alongside a power failure. Life without electric power seems to become impossible for us in this day and age. My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The food we eat is broken down into small particles at chemical level, and ultimately we will get glucose, fats or proteins from our food. The glucose, the fat and the proteins, they are the fuels of our body. But how do these fuels turn into energy? This is the function of mitochondria. Mitochondria, they are shaped like a baguette roll. They are only 2 to 3 micrometers in size and have 2 membranes, inner and outer. When looked under the electron microscope, the inner membrane is folded into cristae and encloses the soluble matrix surrounded by a smooth outer membrane, which creates an additional soluble compartment, the intermembrane space. Every single cell in our body derives its energy from mitochondria to perform all those functions which are essential to life. How does mitochondria produce energy from the fuel that is in the form of glucose, fat or protein? This happens through a series of chemical reactions, and the process is called aerobic respiration, and the final product is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP is the unit of energy that cells then use to perform all those other chemical reactions. This process of producing ATP happens at chemical level, involving number of different enzymes and a number of different reactions. It is not the scope of this silsila to go into the depths of Krebs cycle, as it will complicate the discussion and you may lose track of it. However, in a nutshell, Krebs cycle, which you can see in the image, involves redox reactions, dehydration reaction, hydration reaction, decarboxylation reactions, and eventually all these chemical reactions combined together, they will produce ATP. That's the unit of energy that the cells use. And this is actually a coenzyme energy carrier for cells. You can look at these chemical reactions in the diagram. Those of us who have studied chemistry, they will understand that this process of energy production involves a transfer of hydrogen atoms and electrons. I am specifically making this statement to emphasize the fact that this process of energy production is taking place at atomic level. Atomic level is even a next structure compared to microscopic level. Those of us who have heard about the word atom will know the atom is the smallest particle of a chemical element that can exist. So inside the atom there is also a nucleus, another type of nucleus, which contains protons and neutrons. And outside the nucleus of an atom are entities called electrons. The energy is ultimately carried through these electrons and transferred between different molecules. Who has put the energy in these electrons? Who has made these electrons mobile that they can shift from one molecule to the other? Who tells them when to shift and when not to? Who tells all these coenzymes to facilitate the transfer of electrons, and how many and under what conditions? Who controls all those series of chemical reactions within the mitochondria to produce ATP? All on its own? Surely not. A sound mind cannot conclude that at all. Indeed, it is Allah. There is a being who is controlling the system of the universe, both at microscopic level, atomic level, and macroscopic level. That is Allah. My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, mitochondria are indeed the powerhouse of the cell. Their function is extremely important. If there is any problem with the proper functioning of the mitochondria, then this gives rise to serious medical problems. This can lead to weakness in the skeletal muscles called myopathy, and if this involves muscles of the heart, then it is called cardiomyopathy, and both of these conditions are very serious. Problems with mitochondria can also cause nervous system problems such as ataxia, which is a staggering gait, myoclonus, which is uncontrolled jerking movement, epilepsy, and even dementia. Only if we can be grateful. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So, O men and jinns, which favor of your Lord will you deny? My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, let us now look at the next structure within our body, and that is of Golgi body. Before I describe the structure and function of the Golgi body, I would like you to imagine a scenario. You post a letter in the letterbox. The postman collects the letter and takes it to the sorting office. In the sorting office, all the letters that have come from one city, but they are all destined for different cities and different locations, even different countries. So someone in the sorting office will look at the address and then sort them out based on the destination. These letters will now be packaged into small manageable piles and distributed to the postman, who will then deliver them to each different destination. My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, we learned earlier on that ribosomes translate the genetic code into all sorts of proteins. You can think of these proteins as the letters. These proteins are first packaged by endoplasmic reticulum in a specific order, like the letter being put in an appropriate size envelope. The proteins now packaged appropriately, they are destined for different parts of the body. So there must be some form of address on these proteins. From endoplasmic reticulum, these proteins travel to the sorting office, and that is the Golgi body that you can see in the video. The Golgi body looks at the address of these proteins in the form of specific base sequences and decides on their final destination. These proteins will then travel through the extensive network of blood vessels and eventually reach their final destination in the form of each individual cell. Truly amazing. How does this happen? To understand this, we need to look at the structure of the Golgi body. Golgi body is made up of a series of compartments and is a collection of fused, flattened, membrane enclosed discs known as cisternae. This collection of cisternae is broken down into cis, medial, and trans compartments, making up two main networks, the cis Golgi network and the trans Golgi network. The cis Golgi network is the first cisternal structure, and the trans Golgi network is the final, from which proteins are packaged into vesicles, destined to either lysosomes, secretory vesicles, or the cell surface. Within individual stacks of Golgi body are present assortments of enzymes, allowing for progressive processing of cargo proteins as they travel from the cis Golgi network to the trans Golgi network. Protein modifications may form a single sequence that determines the final destination of the protein. When things go wrong with cis and trans Golgi network and proteins are not packaged appropriately, this can lead to serious medical problems. In diabetes, when there is excessive glucose in the blood, this leads to excessive glycosylation of proteins, which causes long-term complication of diabetes in the form of blindness, sensation problems, kidney failure, and stroke, to name a few. My dear brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, this was a very brief description of structure and functions of the Golgi body and what happens when things go wrong. I hope you will agree with me that there is an extremely intricate mechanism of organization and order within the cell. If this organization and order was not there, there will be chaos in each cell and our body will cease to function. There is also an organization and order required at larger level in our life. Our life has to have an organization and an order for it to be enjoyable. There is the structure of 5 daily prayers. There is the order of keeping your house neat and tidy. There is the order of identifying which activities are useful and should be done and which activities are harmful and should be avoided. If we fail to establish this organization and order in our life, then we will suffer from stress, unhappy life, become ungrateful and disobedient to Allah Azza wa Jal, who has created an intricate order in this universe, both at microscopic and macroscopic level. All I can say is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So, O men and jinns, which favor of your Lord will you deny? Lysosome is the last organelle that we will learn about in this episode. Lysosomes can be compared to the recycling center of the cell. Just the way we produce waste products in our daily life, the cells also produce many waste products after performing all those chemical reactions. It is now the job of the lysosomes that take care of those harmful substances. Lysosomes are small organelles measuring 0.5 to 1 micrometer in size. They are bound by a single membrane. They contain an array of hydrolytic enzymes for degrading carbohydrates, fat and protein that may have entered the cell, which are not needed. Lysosomes may either form from vesicles budding off from Golgi body. An initiation of hydrolytic activity occurs only once they fuse with the membrane-bound vesicles containing undigested material. These digested nutrients are not wasted. Rather, they are used for synthesizing new cell material. Sometimes lysosomes help in the normal turnover of cellular components. Sometimes lysosomes help in the normal turnover of cellular components, for example, by degrading proteins that have reached the end of their useful lives. Several genetic defects give rise to lysosomal storage diseases. One example is SLY syndrome, also known as mucopolysaccharidosis, in which deficiency of an enzyme causes abnormal functions inside the liver, the spleen, the brain, the skeleton, the kidney and the cornea of the eye. My dear son, brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, in this episode and the last episode we have tried to understand the structure and function of a single cell of our body. A cell that we cannot see with our own eyes has a world of its own with intricate network of cytoskeleton, cell membrane and other cellular organelles and all those chemical reactions that are taking place at such a microscopic level with such perfection and precision and control. I hope you can realize that these indeed are all the signs, like the bright daylight, pointing our conscience to the belief that Allah Azza wa Jal exists. Join the Madani environment of Dawat Islami to strengthen this belief further. Every Saturday, try to watch the Madani Muzakara of Amir Sunnah and your mind will be cleared of many confusions through the words of wisdom of this great Wali of Allah of current era. My dear Islam brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, sadly, I have come to the end of this episode. In the next episode, we shall look at other structures within our body, inshallah Azza wa Jal. Until then, keep watching Madani Channel. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم.
We have indeed created man in the best shape.